So how did it come to this? Australia's greatest bank robber surrounded in a Mexican standoff with 100 heavily armed police.
It had the whole city on edge. Never seen anything like it.
This was huge.
For Haki Timmy Adahan, it was meant to be just a normal workday. On a hot summer's afternoon, he caught a ferry into the city to rob a couple of banks. He had it all planned out until he got greedy. One wrong move led to one of the most dramatic days in Australian criminal history, much to his surprise.
He's very confident, arrogant, you know. He's writing in his diary that he's the best bank robber, you know. He really thinks he's something special.
To understand the mind of Haki Timmy Adahan, forensic criminologist Dr. Xanthi Mallet analysed never-before-seen documents, photographs and vision. She went to where he made his last stand and pieced together the dramatic events of his final moments. She discovered a playboy, a gambler, a ruthless criminal genius.
He was a very intelligent man who was willing to take risks, bordering on arrogance, narcissistic. He wanted everyone to recognise his skill.
There was a time not so long ago when Australia was like the Wild West for bank robberies.
At least once a week, a bank was getting robbed. There was no fly-up screens, there was no bullet-resistant glass. Tellers were issued with pistols. The police told you that if you got into trouble, shoot them.
But of all the robbers, the best by far was Tim Adahan. He didn't need an accomplice, didn't have a getaway car. What he had was a brazen self-belief that he could outwit anyone. In less than a year, he held up 16 banks, and Sydney's armed hold-up squad didn't have the faintest idea who he was or where he'd strike next.
His MO, the way he operated, was he would do 2 banks in a day, and they were both close together. So while the police are going to the bank that he had originally done, he'd be a few doors down doing another one.
He was completely unpredictable, so they didn't know how many banks he was going to hit in a day. They didn't know what he looked like.
He was a master of disguise.
Master of disguise, took his disguise off and he'd put another disguise on.
He used to wear wigs and he used to wear hats.
So he didn't look like the same person who walked into that bank.
Dressed as a woman because he was clever, you know. They were looking for a man, and this was somebody who was very adaptable. You know, he worked alone, which shows how confident he was. So this man was good at what he did, and the police were really playing catch-up the whole time. It speaks to the fact that he would do anything he had to do to succeed.
This is what we've discovered about Adahan. He was born in Turkey, the son of the Istanbul chief of police. His father was an alcoholic who regularly beat him. And at 20, Adahan came to Australia with his then wife, a nightclub go-go dancer. They had a daughter, but his marriage failed, as did a string of business ventures, including this takeaway restaurant in Sydney's west. He gambled and needed money to cover his debts. And that's when he turned to robbing banks. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. Before long, he was debt-free and living in a penthouse. Thanks to the banks, money came easy. 1983 was a very good year for Tim Adahan.
Oh, he was good. At the time, he was the best bank robber in the country.
Adahan thought he was untouchable, and indeed he was, until January the 31st, 1984.
Morning, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the music. It's going to be a scorching day in Sydney today. Slip, slop, slap. If you're going outside today, next, that song that's tearing up the charts.
I do remember the day. It was a sticking hot day. It was one of the hottest days I can remember. Not only was it hot, but it was humid.
It was just a normal summer's day. In many ways, the key to Adahan's success was just how quick he could rob a bank. At 3:05, he held up the nearby ANZ. At 3:10, it was the State Bank's turn, directly next door.
It was all over in the matter of a couple of minutes, but it seemed like about half an hour. The blokes headed out the door and one of my colleagues was headed out after him, which I remember thinking at the time, that's probably not a good idea.
The chase was on. The teller was soon joined by 2 passing policemen. Adahan, who'd planned his crimes meticulously, was now thinking on the run. And the decisions he was about to make would lead to Australia's Dog Day afternoon.
My desk was facing out towards the street and he jumped the counter across from my desk and landed next to my desk.
They're after me. They're after me.
And the first thing he said was, they're after me, they're after me. And I'm looking at this man thinking, oh, you poor thing, how can I help you?
They're after me. They're after me.
I thought to myself, where are the inquiry staff? Why didn't this man get served? Why is he so cranky that he's had to jump the counter to get attention?
When did you realise different?
When I saw the gun.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. This is not a joke.
You pressed the alarm.
I pressed the alarm.
And you look outside?
Just police. It's police. And the longer we were there, the more police there were.
After attending court that morning, Detective Senior Constable Steve Canellis was about to go home when he was told to change his plans.
The boss of the hot squad said, there's a siege down the city, you know, get yourself down there.
Newspaper reporter Norm Lipson was nearing the end of his shift.
Myself and my colleague Steve Warnock were sitting there talking about going to the pub for a cold one, and the copy boy came in and said he just heard on the scanner that there was a bank hold up in the city.
Got an urgent situation, one of your other vehicles thinks got 4 persons suited in the car. Charlie 206 and Rosebay 20 shouldn't be far away.
There was a SWAT vehicle there that, you know, handing out bulletproof vests, shotguns. The roads were blocked off. There was uniformed police, plainclothes police.
Hazard a guess, I'd say there'd be maybe 80, 100 police there.
I was assigned a long arm and to get into a building construction site across the road from the Commonwealth Bank and take up a position where, if necessary, I could take aggressive action if it was called for.
For the layperson, what's a long arm?
It was an M16.
What was the weapon you got?
A shotgun.
The negotiation team were in place. The snipers were in place. John Nagle was a sniper.
And every single gun was aimed at us.
Don't look at me.
He was quite frustrated that he'd been trapped, I think.
Shut the fucking phone up!
He was in a hole there and he wasn't going to get out of it that easily.
When you consistently do something, you probably get the bravado that you're never going to get caught. And he had robbed 2 banks and he was then trapped.
Now it's behind a hoarding at the building site. they weren't clear shots. He was moving around, the staff were quite agitated, of course, and it was just a waiting game.
You said there weren't clear shots, but if there had have been, would you have been given permission to shoot him?
If things had turned sour inside the bank, yeah.
Turn around!
Inside, an agitated Adahan paced and smoked incessantly. Outside, the police negotiators kept calling to try and speak with him.
That phone just rang and rang and rang and rang.
And that's the negotiators outside trying to speak to Adahan.
Yeah. He waved one of his guns at me and said, because I was nearest to it, and said, no, answer it.
Answer! Answer!
Well, the first person I spoke to on the phone was actually a customer.
Hello? No, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
The next one was a negotiator, wanting to know a lot of information.
Answer it! Answer it!
Hello?
How many guns has he got? What does he want? We need to speak to him. We need to speak to him.
They want to speak to you.
Tell them to piss off!
And he just got more and more agitated.
I don't want to talk to them. Tell them to piss off. Tell them to piss off.
He kept saying to me, I want a car.
I don't want the manager to drive
I
it.
want the manager to drive it. And I want a helicopter.
He wants a helicopter.
He was saying to me, well, that's not going to happen.
They want to speak to you.
Shut that fucking phone off!
He was in my space at that point. So.
With his gun?
Yeah, yeah.
I just remember he fired a shot.
And it ricocheted off the inquiry counter that was in front of me.
I felt like it went past my ear.
The gunshots certainly made a point. He was dangerous.
Dangerous and determined to not only escape, but to do so after stealing as much money as possible.
Turn around! Turn around!
I can remember him putting his case down on the manager's desk.
Open the safe. Open the safe.
Telling us to go and open the treasury, which had a time lock on it. We took the money into Graham's office. $50 notes was the biggest denomination we had then. He was facing out onto the street, which was all glass, so he could see exactly what was going on. And he had me standing, facing into the strong room.
So that the police couldn't shoot him.
So he was using her as a shield?
Yeah.
And she was pregnant?
Yes.
6 months pregnant, standing in this doorway, blocking this maniac from the police guns.
You scared?
Of course I was scared. I was scared I was going to have a miscarriage. That was what I was scared about.
She started to clutch her stomach and was like, started crying, and I thought, oh my God, she's gonna have this baby.
I said, can I sit down, please? And why do you want to sit down? Then Graham answered him and said, can't you see that she's pregnant?
Can't you see she's pregnant? Fuck.
And that was when he started going off at me.
You fuck off. Fuck off, go.
He said, fuck off, fuck off.
I can't have no fucking woman. Fuck that baby, fuck this up, fuck. Go.
He said, I don't want any fucking women in here fucking this up for me having fucking babies. Fuck off, get out of here. And I said, I'm not going.
She did not want to go.
You not fucking stand up!
I was starting to get very scared at this stage, and I thought, if I start to walk away and he gets really, really cranky, he's going to shoot me in the back. And then he got quite aggro.
No fucking babies, fuck off.
Fucking babies, you're not having fucking babies here, fuck off. So I thought, I'd better go. I got up and I walked out and I got just before the front door and I thought, oh my God, he hasn't shot me.
Come on, come here.
I just remember George was next to me. I remember George praying right next to me, and I thought, that's a pretty good idea. And I think I just had a word to the man upstairs and asked him to keep everyone safe, you know.
And when did you go?
Not long after that.
You! Get out!
Was
Get
just
out!
get out. Get out.
Get out! Go!
That's Joanne.
And I remember getting out and an arm came out from behind a pillar and sort of dragged me around the corner and out of the way.
Joe left, and then I remember the phone ringing and I'm like, batter up, it's going to be me. Hello.
He must have decided that us crying girls needed to leave.
Put it down!
And that's when he wanted everyone to go, when they were upset.
Get out!
I'm like running, get me out of here.
One by one, Adahan let all the female staff and a lone male customer leave. But if police thought the siege was heading for a peaceful conclusion, they badly underestimated Adahan.
His father was a police chief. His father beat him, and he hated his father. So what do you think that meant on this day when he's surrounded by police and he doesn't want to talk to them? What do you think that all meant for him?
I think the police represent something very negative to Adahan, and I think that's why he's always playing cat and mouse. He needs to beat them because he's almost beating his father in those moments.
But for the hostages still inside the Commonwealth Bank, the only emotion was fear. Nearly 2 hours had now passed.
I thought about my mother. I just thought, oh, what's this going to do to my mum?
Everyone, except Adahan, thought that there was no possible escape.
Fuck. Fuck.
Not with more than 100 police and so many snipers outside. But Adahan was cunning. At 5:13 p.m, Adahan ordered Steve Lamb to tell police he wanted a car and a helicopter within the next 7 minutes.
I want the car outside at 5:20.
Then, just before his deadline expired, Adahan sprung his surprise.
We were going to make our way out of the bank.
Go! To the wall! To the wall! Go! Go! You, come!
Adahan ordered Steve Lamb to carry his briefcase. Inside was $54,756 from the 3 banks he'd robbed that day.
He wrapped a jumper or something around his head, and he said, when we get out of the bank, the police will tell you to drop. Don't.
Okay, tell them they're coming out at the moment, the hostages.
This is the actual footage of Adahan and his hostages leaving the bank.
Did you see the gun against Graham's head?
On the television,
Yeah.
yes. But it was harrowing to watch him, and he just looked like a man that he thought he was going to die. He was the one that was going to die, and why was that? Because he was the manager.
They're going down some stairs.
The minute he walked out with those hostages, we just lost control of the situation. We were reacting to him, he wasn't reacting to us. He'd reversed roles, so to speak.
Yeah, I've got the Scots clot on their knees, yeah. Yeah.
He had them place a hand on him, shoulders, head, whatever it might be, and just close in on him. And he wasn't a tall guy, so the staff pretty well had him smothered.
Yes, mate, we've got shots of...
This was a very cunning move on his part.
From memory, he had a hand on my shoulder, and the rest of them had to more or less keep their hands on him.
Get right down.
If the snipers want to take a shot, well, it's a big call to make a shot when he's surrounded by innocent people.
So the snipers could not take a shot?
No, never in a million years would they take a shot in that situation, yeah.
Now listen to me. Just stop there for a minute, mate. Just listen. Timmy, stay there. Just stay there, mate. Just don't be silly. Just stay there, son. Timmy, come here, mate. Just slow it down. Throw it nice and slow. Timmy.
It was a really, really bizarre scene.
Timmy, don't want Timmy. Just listen to me, mate.
It's starting to get a little out of control.
Slow it down there, mate.
Next thing you know, I remember a police officer on a bullhorn, and he started screaming on the bullhorn for the motorists to leave their cars where they were and pedestrians and get out of the area.
Everyone off the cars and to the side now!
Motorists were jumping out of the cars, leaving their cars in the middle of the road and just scattering. And Adahan took advantage of that situation.
And we found a car that someone had left the keys in.
No one's going to get hurt. Slow it down.
What sort of car was it?
A blue Datsun 180B.
You can see here, on the right of the screen, the car's driver abandoning his Datsun.
There was a Porsche there too. He went straight past the Porsche.
Okay.
With his gun still aimed at the bank manager, Adahan dragged him into the car. For Jeff Findlay, right now was his chance to escape.
And I had to walk around the car to get into it. There was certainly an opportunity there, because he'd already got in the car, for me to just bolt. Could have done that easily.
Why didn't you?
Well, if I'd bolted, who dies? If I've upset the guy with the gun, then there's potentially an injury or worse that's going to happen to somebody else.
One of your colleagues?
One of my colleagues, yeah.
You couldn't leave them behind?
No. So the theory was to stay there and see it through.
It was a manual, and Graham couldn't drive a manual car.
He did a good job that day.
Adahan was sitting in the middle and the front, basically on the handbrake. The hostage was driving, but very slowly, because the police in their cars were trying to block him. I don't know what made me do it. I thought I was going to get a scoop, and I just jogged up beside the car. I managed to get right beside the car. The windows were open, and I just looked in and said, "Is everyone all right?" And next thing you know, he points a gun out the window, and he pointed it straight at me.
Show me.
He went like that. "Fuck off or I'll shoot you."
What did Norm do?
He fucked off. He went, took off.
The siege had now gone mobile. Nothing like this had ever been seen in an Australian city. Not before, not since. Chasing the slow-moving blue Datsun were the men in blue.
We then scurried around to get vehicles to get in and follow him.
Just jumped in the car and just happened to be the lead car.
And then other cars started to follow as well.
Now, sorry, fellas, had to come. Come on, that's our area.
The heart of Sydney was in lockdown. Frightened of being shot by the police, Adahan ordered his hostages to make him a harder target.
He had told us from the time we got in the car just to keep moving from side to side. So we're just doing this the whole time. And then as soon as you'd sort of slow down, if he got a notion that you'd stopped, he'd keep moving, so that no one could get a clear shot at him.
He's coming up! Right out in the middle of the road! Hang on.
Now they're on this street, on Macquarie Street, past Parliament House.
Yep.
Heading out of the city, and the police don't know where.
Yep, well, I don't think Adahan knows where at this point either. He's just going to keep moving until he can come up with a plan.
Have you ever seen anything like
that? No, never.
More details are coming through of the siege that's gripping Sydney this afternoon. And these are scenes the like of which Australia has never seen.
Follow left here, follow left.
I was sharing a bucket seat with him, and there wasn't a lot of space. And it's one of the reasons I was arm out the window and leaning as far left as I possibly could for the majority of the time.
Bondi Beach was his first port of call. Yeah. And then he doubles back, goes back into the city. And the police all following, they have no idea what he's doing.
Well, I don't think he has any idea what he's doing at this point, does he? All he knows is he's got to keep moving. So he's just got to stay one step ahead until he can find that escape route.
Police observers say for some reason he's been stripping off clothes and it's believed he may stop and make a run for it. At last report, the Datsun was seen travelling along the Caerl Expressway and is heading towards the northern suburbs.
And now he's heading across the harbour bridge.
Yep. Yeah, basically he's going to where he's familiar, isn't he? He's still trying to plan his way out.
Yes.
I don't think he's given up. Yeah, I think he's just getting off on all this attention. And he's certainly not going to stop until he has to. He's going to keep this up as long as he can.
He is still being pursued by a convoy of police vehicles, ambulances and newsmen.
And it looks like a large number of police following the vehicle at this time. He's just going past us at the moment. We can see 1, 2, 3 people in the back and 4 people in the front of the car as he goes past, and this huge contingent of police vehicles following behind. Must be 30 or 40 police cars following this vehicle.
This was huge. This is the first mobile siege situation that's ever happened. And I don't think it's ever happened since.
We're just behind the ambulance now. We're positioning ourselves.
There was probably 30 cars in the convoy. We were the lead car. Yeah, it was a pretty amazing scene. You've got the police helicopters, you've got the news helicopters.
Because it was live on radio and live on television, people knew where the car was or where it was heading. They were coming out of their homes and out of their offices and waving.
There were people out on their balconies, glasses of wine in their hands, and drinking and cheering and clapping. It was reality TV on steroids. It was just crazy.
He became a celebrity for that amount of time.
Do you think he was enjoying the attention?
Definitely. Yeah.
It made him feel important and big. It made him feel like the big man.
Go straight, go straight, go straight!
There were times when he was almost friendly. At one stage, he was going to take us back to his place for a drink.
He was going to ply us with alcohol.
Oh, yeah, let's. I think we were all trying to make him feel a little more at ease.
Are you scared?
Yes.
There was no predicting Adahan's mood or his orders, and one of the crazier ones came late in the afternoon.
He wanted us to ring his girlfriend and tell her to meet us down at Manly.
With a gun at the driver's head, he went to Manly, where one of the hostages left the car to make a phone call and got back in.
The hostage was bank employee Mike Williams.
Adahan had told Mike to get out and make a phone call from a public phone box.
He wants you to meet us at the front, not at the back.
We drove around a bit and then down to Manly, and his girlfriend was standing on the side of the road. We pulled over.
And then the female got into the car.
Was there a thought then to try and stop him at this point?
No, because he still had the gun at the bank manager's head.
Too difficult, too dangerous.
Yep.
He told Mike to get out, and she got in. I remember thinking, gee, I wish I was Mike.
Have you been watching? Did you see me on TV?
Well, he was showing off. He was showing off to his girlfriend. He's this Turkish immigrant, unknown to everyone. All of a sudden, he's a big celebrity. He's got the whole city on edge, and he's telling his girlfriend, look at me, look how famous I am now.
He wanted her there at the end. He wanted her to see that he was making the decisions, he was still the man, so that she could actually witness that, you know, his last big, his last big show.
Follow left here, follow left. Follow left.
Adahan tells Graham Stewart to head back to Bondi in Sydney's east. But there's only one way to get there, across the Spit Bridge, which is regularly raised throughout the day to allow boats to pass underneath. It's here that the police decide to make their stand.
One of the fellows that was at the command post, he lived in that area, and he said, look, we can put the Spit Bridge up, so he can't come back. All we've got to do is stop him going up the hill.
It seemed like a good idea, but it brought one very big problem.
The bridge is raised and lowered mechanically, and the engineer raised the bridge, and the police were telling him to hold it open. But he was telling the police, the engine's going to overheat, it's going to collapse, it's going to collapse.
So there was a very real fear that the bridge itself would collapse?
Yeah, there was.
And that wasn't the only issue police faced.
It was starting to get dark. Yeah.
Were you worried that nightfall might give him the opportunity to slip away?
That's why the negotiators requested the closure of the bridge.
So your time was running out, you had to act?
Yep.
The information from the psychiatrist was the hostage taker would have had to have been emotionally, physically and psychologically exhausted. So he said he'll give up.
Just think about yourself, mate. You're under your gun, mate. You've got plenty of time left. So why waste your time sitting in a motor car? Very, very hot. Now I know it's hot. Just gets more and more uncomfortable.
And what was his response?
Oh, fuck off. I'll kill you.
Cameras catch a visibly agitated Adahan waving his loaded pistol. Up above, excited crowds seem oblivious to the real danger the hostages are in. Adahan suddenly orders the bank manager, Graham Stewart, to make a U-turn.
He had Graham turn the car around across the median strip, and we were going to head back to Manly. There were a couple of cars blocking our way, and we pushed our way through.
And as they did, the crowds cheered.
And I remember thinking there's some of them, this guy's driving around with a gun and hostages, and you're out there cheering.
Did it make you angry? Nervous?
Nervous, yeah.
But this time, there's no escape for Adahan. Just out of sight of the news cameras, more police cars hem the Datsun in, forcing it to stop.
We pulled up with our left-hand front guard on his back right-hand guard.
And we weren't going anywhere.
After hours of watching and waiting, 3 brave policemen now act. Steve Canellis carrying a shotgun, Steve Packer armed with a service pistol, and the police sniper John Nagel with his M16.
Where were you aiming?
For his neck.
For his neck? Why the neck?
To try and hit the spine.
But John Nagel had a big problem. Steve Lamb's head was in the way.
He was doing this just continuously. I couldn't risk a shot whilst he was still bobbing. I needed a clear shot.
What did you yell?
Backseat, hostage, sit still, sit still.
Sit still!
Hostage at the back, stay still, don't move.
Back seat hostage! Sit still!
He finally adhered to what I asked him to do. And just as well, because soon after that, Adahan made a move that changed the rules of engagement.
Nagel, Packer and Canellis crept forward, hoping Adahan would surrender.
This is it. This is the moment.
We all get round the car. I put my head through the window and say, you can't go anywhere. It's not going any further. Give it up.
His words from my recollection were, you're fucked now, mate.
You're fucked now, mate. Come on, Tim, it's all over. Put the gun down, you're fucked.
Can you remember how he looked when you told him to...
Craziest eyes I've ever seen.
Really? How did they look?
Oh, his eyes were just... Honestly, I'll never forget, his eyes were just enlarged.
Looking at Adahan down the barrel of his M16 through the car's rear window was Nagel. Aiming at him through the back passenger window was Packer, who'd had only the most basic police firearm training.
What margin of error did you have?
Very minimal. There wasn't a lot of space in the car to make an error.
And at the front was Steve Canellis wielding his shotgun. He was playing a deadly game of bluff.
I can't use the shotgun. The shotgun's just there for threat, fear. Because if I fired my shotgun at him, I would have killed the passenger next to him.
That passenger was Jeff Findlay.
Steve would have to be the bravest man in the world. In my opinion, he's walked up to that window and said, you either give yourself up or shoot me.
And next?
Next he just said, fuck you, and shot me.
And he just went bang.
Without warning to Steve, he's just gone bang.
Right here, right between the eyes.
Right between
right
the
there,
eyes.
exactly there, yeah. Oh, immense. I've never experienced pain like it.
Blood coming out of a wound there, he had blood coming out of his nose, he had blood coming out of his mouth.
And I just sort of rocked back from the car and I put my hand, it wasn't until I put my hand up and it was just covered in blood that I realised I'd been shot.
Adahan's homicidal act left Steve Packer and John Nagel with no choice.
That was the go button for Steve and I to shoot the guy.
I then shot him.
How quickly?
Straight away.
Bang, bang, bang.
No second thoughts?
No.
Where the glass is broken from that, that's when my shot went through that window there.
Which was the bullet that killed, do you think?
Well, both would have.
Both?
Yeah.
It was that instantaneous?
Yep, yep.
But in death, Adahan was still a danger. He was still clutching his gun when he was hit, and his last act was to pull the trigger, firing one more shot.
So that second bullet from Adahan could have gone anywhere. Thankfully, it went through the roof.
Onto the near side of the car, opened the passenger's door. The big fellow was sitting there, and I called out to him to get out, but poor bugger, he was frozen.
And then you dragged out?
Yeah.
By the hair?
By the hair.
He had a shock of hair. I grabbed a handful of hair and pulled him out of the car.
The next thing I recall is lying down pretty much in the gutter. I had glass fragments and some metal fragments in my scalp. The scalp bleeds a lot. I was covered in blood. And then I remember vaguely seeing a police officer standing over me, shaking his head, saying, he's a goner. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
All the hostages and Adahan's girlfriend were now free. Slumped, lifeless on the front seat, lay the self-proclaimed greatest bank robber of all.
One of my colleagues joined me and we reached in, grabbed Adahan and pulled him out to just confirm that he was of no more danger.
Was he dead then?
He was dead, yeah.
There are a couple of reasons why he shot the police officer at the end. I think he knew that it was up. You know, he had nowhere left to go. He had officers surrounding the car, sharpshooters. So I think in that moment, he was going to go out on his own terms. So the only opportunity for him to make a decision at that point was suicide by cop.
Adahan was dead. Steve Canellis was fighting for his life. Watching on, John Nagel was fearful Steve wouldn't make it.
I mean, how many people get shot between the eyes and live?
Ambulance officers rushed to treat Steve.
I heard the calls for medics. That's why he went down.
As they did, a bystander who'd witnessed the shooting also went to help. The advice he gave almost certainly saved Steve's life.
This person said, why don't you lie him prone, which is face down on his stomach, on his elbows on the stretcher.
And he said, don't load him into the ambulance on his back because blood will run into his lungs and he'll drown before you get him to hospital.
And I said, oh yeah, that'll work, that's a good idea. We'll do that.
Which allowed the blood to flow out freely and didn't drown in his own blood, so he's very lucky.
I just thought he was a member of the public. And then when he walked away, I saw a stethoscope poking out of his pocket. And I remember saying to you, he must be a doctor.
And that saved your life?
Yeah.
But Steve was not yet out of the woods.
All the way in the ambulance, all I could think about is I've got to tough it through. I've got to somehow make it through. I've got the boys. I don't want them to grow up without a father. And
how old were your kids?
My eldest son, Matthew, was 5, and my youngest son, Brett, was 2.
You were losing a lot of blood?
Yeah.
He was raced to Sydney's Royal North Shore Hospital, where that night he was placed in an induced coma. Millimetres were the difference between life and death for Steve. The angle of his head when he leant in to confront Adahan caused the bullet to pass fractionally below his brain and strike his skull instead. 1 week later, he was well enough to speak.
Penetrated through just the bridge of the nose there, travelled an angle and struck the back of my skull.
Struck the back of the skull?
Then just travelled down, side of my throat, into my shoulder, and it lodged down here, right side of my shoulder.
Still here, right here. Right there. The little black markers where the bullet went. And the black eyes and the swollen face, yes.
A couple of beautiful shiners.
Yeah, they're good ones, aren't they?
Looking at that, do you consider yourself lucky to be alive?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Every day. I've had 35 years I shouldn't have had. I've seen my kids grow up. I've seen my kids have grandkids. I've seen them get married. You know, that's to be shot where I was shot. Yeah, shouldn't have been.
You shouldn't be alive.
Yeah, exactly.
By rights, Steve should be dead. He's the lotto man.
And what was your reaction to hearing that he'd died?
Bad luck. Too bad, so sad.
Those 3 blokes saved my life.
Would you like to see them again?
Yeah.
Would it be good to meet them?
Absolutely it would.
Have you ever met them since?
No.
Would you like to?
Oh, yes.
G'day.
Peggy! I haven't seen you forever.
Hello.
I was in the lift with this lady. Oh, this is
How lucky is Steve Canellis?
Oh, you can't get luckier than him.
Friday.
How lucky am I? Yeah. Just wasn't my turn. My number wasn't coming out of the barrel that day.
Do you consider yourself lucky?
Oh, yeah. I was lucky that I got through it and had a baby.
And how is your baby?
My baby is very well. He's very big and strong and healthy.
How old now?
34.
I have a good life now. I have a good wife. I have good friends. I'm in a good place.